On this episode of Locked On Angels, Artie spoke to the media last week again. So was it more of the same, or was there something that sounded a bit different this time? John and I are going to dissect the words and analyze what Artie said and what it means for the future of our Halos. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. You can place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're in our third offseason here at Locked On Angels, talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, every single weekday. We'll be doing that through late December. We'll drop down to about 3 episodes for the offseason. But until then, 5 episodes a week, including today's show. Arte Moreno spoke again. He spoke more than once to the media.
Yeah.
Pigs fly, I guess. What he had to say was actually a little bit different than what he had to say a week earlier. So, Mike, let's start the conversation with what he had to say about 2024 and the future.
Yeah, Artie said he was frustrated as anybody with the 99 losses, and he said the goal is to compete for the postseason in 2025 with an eye on building a sustainable winner. His quote was a bit different than what we heard the week before. Artie said, the reality is that we need to put a competitive team out there. We have some young players and more depth than we've had before, and we'll have even more depth in 2026. When you're looking at 25, you're looking at a combination of 25 and 26. What we have to do is do things in 25 to be competitive as we can, but also we need to do things to enhance 2026 so that we will be deeper. John, this sounds a bit different than what he said the week prior, and just competing in 2025. He added the idea of 2026 and actually being a team that thinks about not just right now, but thinks about the future. So how does this strike you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, who are you and what have you done with Arte Moreno? Because this doesn't sound like the guy that we've been dealing with for the last 20 years. But here's the thing, Mike. The fact that he went from that conversation of looking at 2025 to be competitive, now he's talking to Rhett Bollinger of MLB.com and talking about words like depth and 2026 and being deeper beyond next year. This is the language that you would hope to hear from somebody in Arte Moreno's position. Now, I'm not going to change what I said last week when you asked me, what does this do for you? I said grain of salt. And I think that point still stands. I think it still makes sense to take what Arte Moreno has said with a grain of salt. But as far as what you want to hear from somebody in Artie's position, the owner of this team, looking at 2025, trying to be competitive there, but then also trying to be deeper in 2026 and enhancing beyond just next year. It is a change of pace from the, focusing on this year and we're going to the playoffs, we're going to be competitive, this is a winning team. It feels like a little bit more self-reflection. And yet, as an Angel fan, I'm not getting my hopes up because I don't want to buy into something that isn't there, because this, at the end of the day, is, like I said, it's what you want to hear, but it is TBD on whether it's lip service, saying the right things, or saying what people want to hear. But it's more than what we've received in the last few years, which is, we're going to be competitive this year, we're going to make the playoffs. I've said all that already, but what I'm trying to say is at least there seems to be a direction and a recognition of what's to come, as opposed to we got to get Trout and Otani to the playoffs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's what makes this hard, because he is saying the things that we've been longing for him to say the last 10 years.
Sure.
We've been wanting him to be clear about what the strategy is. What's the vision for the team? John, I was thrilled to hear him talk about not just 2025, but 2026.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you for being thrilled. And like I said, it makes me happy to hear these things.
Right.
I can't. All right, prove it,
Right. And that's really what it'll boil down to for us and for all of our everydayers and all of the Angel fans. I think that when we enter into this offseason, we have to enter this offseason the same way that we entered the regular season last year, with no expectations. And what we've seen so far are good steps in the right direction. That's the thing that I'm thrilled about. That the communication has been a lot quicker, a lot louder, and more frequent since the season ended for the Angels. And there's been a lot of clarity around, okay, we're moving towards something. Now, they haven't done anything. They can't do anything until the season's over.
Sure.
I get all of that. And that's going to be probably the most predominant comment that people will have about Arte Moreno and this conversation. But I look at it as, we're taking steps. We've been asking for clarity. We've been asking for some sort of direction. And so I think that what we're getting is the best version of Arte right now. This, you're right, doesn't change how we feel, doesn't change that a change needs to be made at the top, that a new owner would be a whole lot more fun. All of those things are still true. And what's true is that Arte's doing the things that fans have been clamoring for, that we have been longing for. And we're going to have to see some action. And if the action is signing that fourth-rate outfielder and that third-rate starting pitcher, then all of this talk is just laughable. But, John, it does sound a bit different because he did add 2026 to the conversation and talked about how, hey, we're going to build not just for this year, but for the next year. And as somebody who loves strategy, somebody who loves vision, somebody who gets to do that, a part of his job, I really like what I've heard. And I feel like I got to caveat it. I'm not saying he should stay. I'm not saying he shouldn't sell. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I like what we've heard so far in these conversations. I like this conversation better than the previous week's conversation, because this one felt a little bit more substantive. And it felt a little bit more strategic. It felt a little bit more thoughtful, not just for this year, but for the years to come.
Maybe I don't know if I have I don't even think this is the right use of the phrase, but like Stockholm Syndrome, where you and I have been shouting into the void for like 2 or 3 years regarding, hey, add some pieces now that bring you sustainability in the future. And I know part of that is the young guys. I know part of that is having pieces that you can count on for the next 5 to 8 years. And that's Logan O'Hoppe and Zach Neto and those guys. And at the same time, and I keep hammering this point home, and I notice our everydayers are picking up on it too. You got to add your Semyons. You got to add your Seagers.
Yeah.
And even if you go and lose 60 or win 60 games like the Rangers did that next season, then at least you have a plan in place, right? It's not fun to go through that, but at least you had a plan in place. And so that's the thing is I feel like we've just been shouting into the void about having this kind of foresight to look at 2025 and 26. And now that somebody else is speaking it, and in particular Arte Moreno, it's like, am I shocked? Am I on hidden camera here? Like, what's going on? Mike, what is it that changed within the week? Is it they listened to Locked On Angels? I mean, probably not. But what changes here in a week that makes this conversation look the way it does now?
I think it's the audience. I think it's who's interviewing him. And I wonder, Arte has already shown that he likes to talk to some people and doesn't like to talk to other people. Our buddy Sam Blum tweeted after this happened, still waiting for my conversation with Arte at The Athletic. They just seem to like blackball him and don't want anything to do with him. Right or wrong, it just seems kind of funny. And so poor Sam, we're with you, Sam. But I think it's the audience, John. And I wonder if there's more of a soft heart, soft spirit towards a Rhett Bollinger, who has been kind of a very neutral reporter on the Angels. And I think Jeff Fletcher is the same way. Jeff has been very neutral. I think Sam obviously gets accused of being negative, it's hard not to be about this team.
Yeah.
But I think that Sam can put a magnifying glass on some things that other reporters don't do. And that, right or wrong, that's just how I've seen, that's my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and just so we're clear, love Sam.
Yeah.
Good friend, right?
Yeah,
and
great work.
And he does great work. I just think that a lot of this has to do with who's sitting on the other side of Artie. And I wonder if there is a relationship, a friendship, a camaraderie, if there is just, I don't feel threatened. I don't feel like he's going to ask me bad questions. I don't feel like he's going to bring up Tyler Skaggs. I don't feel like he's going to bring up what happened with the mayor. I think that that's part of why Artie's narrative has been a bit more positive. And from the week to week difference in conversation, it might have to do with the audience that he's talking to. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to me, it just seems like somebody got in his ear and said, hey, look, if you say 2025, then people are just going to think you're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And that was our response here. And to be fair, that was the response on social media.
Yeah.
And so I think perhaps somebody got in his ear and tried to clarify and get him to clarify that statement to say, hey, you got to look beyond 25. You got to look at 26. You got to realize that what you do now is going to affect what happens in the years to come. And Mike, that might not mean what everybody thinks it might mean in terms of adding free agents who are here for a while. It might mean, hey, we're not going to sign the big arm because in 26, we want to get Freddie Peralta. You know what I mean? Just who's out there at that point in time could be the difference. So I don't know what this looks like other than the language of being competitive beyond 2025 is, again, refreshing in a sense. It's the first time we've heard something like this, but don't get your hopes up.
Yeah.
And we will also not get our hopes up. We're going to talk about like what we'd like to do over the offseason. We talk about the free agents we'd like to add. Mike, I think it might even be time for us to, I know we do our GM episodes with free agents. Maybe we get into some trades too, because it seems like that might be a direction that the Angels go in. So all that to say, take this with a grain of salt once again, but this is a step in the right direction in terms of not doing the same things over and over and over and over again. This seems like different language than what we're used to hearing. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, Artie gave yet another reason why he didn't re-sign Shohei Ohtani. This reason is kind of up there with the rest of the silly reasons he shared before. We'll tell you what he said and what he argued here in just a minute.
Today's episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Ibata. It's a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies and so much more. The average Ibata user earns over $250 per year. That's fantastic. Could cover the cost of a shopping trip, maybe a quick flight that you've been eyeing, or dinner that you want to go out to because you're craving that fancy restaurant. Other apps just give you points. It doesn't really amount to much, but with Ibata, you just add your offers in the app, you upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out in your bank account, PayPal, or you can get gift cards. With over 50 million savers on Ibata, you can join them and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers like Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, so much more. And right now, Ibata's offering our listeners $5 just for trying their app. All you have to do is enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. So download the free app today and start earning cash back and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and they're going to give you $5 just for trying it. That's Ibata in the Google Play Store or App Store, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And every dayers, you can support the show and you can support the Super Halo Bros with your own Super Halo Bros merch. There's a link in the episode description. Somebody said, I couldn't find the link. Well, if you're on YouTube, you got to hit show more, I believe is the phrase, Mike. So whether you're on the phone or on the computer, just hit show more, and then it'll expand the description for you. And yes, we have links to the merch store. We have links to our Substack, where I'm writing Angels blogs and articles there from time to time, trying to up the frequency of that. So just a lot of ways to help support the show. And it directly helps Mike and I. So we hope that you'll hit that link in the description. Get yourself a Super Halo Bros shirt.
Johnny Artie said that it pained him that 4 postseason games were being played last Wednesday as he was having the conversation with MLB.com and Rhett Bollinger. And he said it pained him because the Angels haven't made the playoffs since 2014, the longest streak in baseball currently. He said he believed they had a playoff caliber team last season, 2023, and they made the additions at the deadline to reflect that before it unraveled. And then
sorry, I misread that as 2024 when you said last season. I was like, what? Last season? 2024? But yes, 23.
Yes.
Ohtani, Trout.
Yes.
And all those guys. Yes, I understand.
Then he said that they had to be realistic from a financial perspective headed into 2024. And then what he found, I found this interesting, John. What he said, I found really interesting. He said, having Trout and Rendon under contract made it unfeasible to re-sign Shohei Ohtani. He said they received multiple offers for Shohei, but decided to go for it. Now, we do know that Ohtani signed with the Dodgers, and they did some magic tricks to make his contract work, right? So hearing Artie say, well, I couldn't do it because I already had these 2 other big contracts on the books, does it mean one of 2 things? That one, he's not aware of baseball rules in regards to contracts and that you can maybe offset some of the costs by sending it down the line, or 2, that he's not aware that fans are aware of how baseball rules work in regards to contracts. What is this, Johnny? Tell me what this is.
All this deferral stuff that came out of, the Shohei Ohtani contract, obviously it's the biggest amount of deferrals there have been in a contract. I know obviously the Mets are still paying Bobby Bonilla and all that stuff. But look, I think that it was a shock to everybody, and it was specifically designed to get the Dodgers not under the luxury tax, because obviously they're not under the luxury tax, but it does free up salary space in terms of cash flow, right? They're paying Shohei his $2 million, but then the money that the rest of the money you'd spend on him, you can put towards other free agents. Still not going to keep you under the luxury tax, but it is going to help you have a greater cash flow and be able to spend the way that you want to. And I think it was so jarring the way that it was structured that it made everybody kind of do a double take.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that it's Artie being unaware that can be done, or fans being unaware that can be done, or him trying to convince fans that it can't be done. Number one, we have to remember that Artie does not go over the luxury tax. He did it once in the 2000s, and then he did it temporarily in 2023 when they made all those moves to get the trades at the deadline, and then they dumped them before they were penalized for it. So we have to understand that the hard and fast salary cap, quote unquote, for Arte Moreno is whatever the luxury tax is going to be that year in Major League Baseball. Having said that, I think it's kind of silly to blame Trout and Rendon's contracts
right,
as the reason why you couldn't bring back somebody like a Shohei Ohtani for 2024. And this has been said many times. I think you and I said it right from the outset when we realized he wasn't going to bring back Shohei Ohtani because of the cost and the contract. Mike, I'm sure the Dodgers have made that money back already this year. And at first it was like, well, they'll probably make that money back in 2 or 3 years. I believe they probably have already done it.
Right.
We'll wait till the records come out and whatnot. But I'm sure they've already done it with sponsorships and all the things that come along with, the nation of Japan supporting the Dodgers. So I think what is silly here, like you said, is the idea that somehow Trout and Rendon's contracts precluded him from signing Shohei Ohtani to a contract, because all along, even before the contract was up for negotiation and he was a free agent, Arte Moreno was like, he's one of the top 10 players in baseball. We've been over this.
Right.
I thought the number would start with 400,000. So it just seems so out of sight for Arte Moreno that he didn't understand the value of having a player like that and the marketability of a player like that, which is hilarious because you're supposed to be the big billboard marketing guy, you and Carpino. And so it's funny that they couldn't see a world where this financial burden, quote unquote, doesn't come back to do everything that they want, which is make this team some money,
right,
and put a good product on the field.
right.
I understand perhaps the notion that having Ohtani on this team had too many question marks. You don't know if he's going to pitch.
Sure.
Obviously, he had a great season as a DH, but he was just coming off the pitching injury last year, and you don't know how that's going to affect the hitting. We've seen it firsthand where, the pitching and the pitching injury does affect the hitting, and he didn't really light up the world again until he was able to do both at an elite level starting in 2021. So I understand the risk. I understand, do you want that kind of money on the team when you're not sure what you have in 2024? Because this was a development year. You had to see what you had with these young guys. Now, looking back, would this team have benefited from a DH who, was in the 50-50 club or whatnot? Then yeah, I think that would have made a huge difference this season. I just don't think the Angels are ready yet to have that kind of bat. So to me, I get it, not bringing him back in that sense. But the reasons and the dancing around being competitive this year, they crack me up, because I think they underestimate how smart the fans can be sometimes, right?
Yeah, and one of our everydayers pointed out when Artie talked about one particular team having to pull out equity to be able to pay for their payroll, which is probably the Padres, who he's talking about. One of our everydayers pointed out the numbers are available and what teams made and what teams spent, and every team made money. Every team was doing just fine. And so it does feel kind of like this bait and switch of like, well, they had to do that, but then don't look at the bottom line, right? And so I think what Artie does, and what I'm learning about our owner for the Angels, is that Artie only operates in bottom line numbers. Artie needs to see the numbers on the Excel spreadsheet in front of him. There's no hypotheticals. There's no money sent down the line. Like, he wants everything at the end of the year. I need everything to look great in the bottom line. I need everything to be in the red or in the black, right? I need everything to look fancy. I need zeros and not cents after that. And I think that is part of what we're hearing from him. I don't think he communicates it very well. And I think that that's part of what he's saying here, is that I'm looking at the bottom line, I'm looking at the numbers, and it didn't make sense in my mind. However, I would push back on that and say, you still would have been under the luxury tax with Shohei Ohtani and the additions that you made to this team last offseason. And you have Anthony Rendon for 2 more years. And so if you got fancy with Shohei's contract, you would be just fine, because Rendon goes off the books in 2 years, and then you can pay Shohei a large amount of money and not have to sweat it and think that you're going to go over the luxury tax. And the luxury tax is going to continue to grow as baseball revenue grows. And so this is all the stuff that fans are like, wait, what about this? What about that? Which makes it difficult, I know, for the Rhett Bollingers and the, Jeff Fletchers and even the Sam Blums when they ask questions. It's probably why we don't see Sam Blum having a conversation with Artie versus these other guys, because who knows what kind of questions they're saying and they're pushing back on, because these would be the questions I would have. Like, wait a second, the Padres are fine. Why are you bringing up the Padres? Or wait a second, Rendon, you had 2 more years with this guy. You would have been under the luxury tax if you signed Shohei for $30 million this year and then had $40 million the next few years. And so a lot of this just feels kind of like I know what I'm talking about, and I'm just going to do it this way. And I think what we've got with Artie is he's just a bottom line, real number kind of guy. I need to see it on a spreadsheet. I need to see it in front of me. And if it's not in front of me, or if it's hypothetical, I don't want to deal with it.
You said something last week that really struck me, and it was Artie kind of deals in what the Angels can't do versus what they could do, should do, can do, right? And I think this is an example of one of those, we really couldn't, do it with all 3 guys on the same contract. I mean, look, Mike, the fact is he paid Ohtani more money last year than the Dodgers did this year.
Yeah.
I understand the contract's deferred, but arbitration gave Shohei Ohtani $30 million.
And he was paying Rendon and Trout last year.
Yeah.
That same amount of money, right? Trout's at like 35, and I think Rendon's at 37 million. So he's nothing would have changed.
No. In fact, there would have been more salary space.
Yeah.
Had he worked out a deal with Shohei Ohtani similar to what the Dodgers were able to do.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel. They're America's #1 sports book, and they want you to be smarter when you place a bet. So when you're watching a game, you got a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the live stats, the latest stats on FanDuel, and see the play-by-play, so much more on the same page that you're placing your bet, so that you can go, I think I want to do this, and I don't want to do that, and I want to bet on this, and I don't want to bet on that. That's why FanDuel's here. They're here for you. They want you to be a winner, the winner that you are. FanDuel will get you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is place the first $5 bet, and they're going to give you $200. What a gift from FanDuel. And it's all available at FanDuel.com.
Mike, revisiting and continuing what Arte Moreno had to say last week to Jeff Fletcher and the Southern California News Group, and then this week to Rhett Bollinger, spoke again on the young core, the young guys that developed in 2024. He said he's ready to support them in 2025 and beyond. Now, this is the key part that I think everybody will want to hear. He said the plan now is to add to the roster via free agency and trades this offseason. He said the Angels will be looking to add to the infield, the outfield, and the rotation. Already said, I just want the young guys to be around people who want to win and want to compete. That's so important. But we need to spend enough money, keep our fans engaged, and for them to understand what we're trying to accomplish. It's not for a lack of trying. Now, the question here is, it's never been about trying for the fans, right? It's been about how they go about the trying. It's not a yes or no. Are you trying? Yes or no. It's
right.
What are you doing when you say that you try?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're going to run down the West, and then we're going to sign, Hunter Strickland, right? That's where...
Or give Robert Stevenson a deal where we obviously know that he's not going to pitch this season.
Right. Yeah. That's the tension. So we know that they're trying. It's just you're trying in a really odd, unhelpful way.
It's the same conversation of, does Artie spend money? Well, yes and no. No, he spends money.
Yeah.
He spent money, but that's not the issue. The issue is how the money is being spent, right? All those years ago, re-signing Torrey Hunter at a cheaper cost than bringing in Josh Hamilton could have netted you maybe Zach Greinke and Torrey Hunter, and you would have gotten more production out of Torrey Hunter than Josh Hamilton. It's stuff like that, that we talk about when we say, no, it's not that he doesn't spend money, it's how he's spending the money. But then if you want to go beyond that and take it to a deeper level, it's what are you doing for your farm system? Are they sharing bunk beds? Are they, driving through Chick-fil-A? Are they doing Uber Eats on the side because they can't afford a healthy lifestyle with the salary that they're on as minor leaguers? And are you investing in, pitching labs and hitting labs? Well, yes, they finally are. So that's a step in the right direction. That's spending money in a good direction.
Yeah.
But man, it's never been about, are they trying or not? It's how they try. And I think that's a reflection of how Artie spends money.
Yeah. Do you remember in the first interview, Artie said that he loved the communication between him and Perry Minassian? And John, I think that this is evidence that there is some really good communication and some influence from Perry Minassian, because I like what he said about the young players. We want to bring in people that want to win and compete. We want to surround our young players with those types of people, which tells me two things. One, tells me that Perry Minassian has been talking to Artie and being very clear about, here's how we're doing this. And it may be Perry Minassian that told Artie, hey, bro, throw in 2026 as well, because we're not just playing for this season. We heard Mike and John on Locked On Angels frustrated with that, so let's clarify for them. But also, I think that what we hear is that Perry has a plan, and the plan is to not go buck wild and trade some of our young assets, our young core, so that we can compete this year and not be competitive in the years to come. It sounds like they're going to add pieces to this team to make it a really competitive team, obviously with whatever budget they have, but a team that is going to emphasize and flex on the dudes that they already have and supplement the team with great support around that. And I think the Dodgers are a good example of that. They have Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, but then they have their young guys. They've got Will Smith, who is brought up through their organization, right? Their version of Logan O'Hoppe. They have a Gavin Lux, and they have a lot of guys on their team that came up through their system, but they've surrounded them with guys that can carry the weight in big moments when they get to the playoffs. And it sounds like that's what the Angels want to do. Bring in some winners. Hopefully, Mike Trout can stay on the field, and this team has, similar to what other competitive teams have, they have really strong veterans with a lot of experience who really have a desire to win, and young guys who just don't know the meaning of stop, just don't know the meaning of no. They want to keep moving forward and get a whole lot better. So it sounds like Perry Minassian really has been communicating some good things to Arte Moreno, or I'm just really hopeful.
Well, and that's the thing. Grain of salt is maybe, we said no expectations last year. Maybe this year is grain of salt.
Grain of salt.
Everything that they say, all right, well,
that's it. Hashtag it.
And here's the thing. I think Perry Minassian, to your point, he pulled down the chart, projected what the Royals did, and say, hey, look, they got Bobby Witt Jr. and Vinny Pasquantino, and then they traded for Cole Reagans, and they got this good young crew. And then you know what they did? They added Lugo and Waka, and they're not the big superstar names, but they're guys who want to win, and they're guys that will keep you competitive. That's what we need to do next year, Artie, is bring in those types of guys to make it happen. And at the end of the day, Mike, isn't that just baseball? I mean, you build up your young core, you create this young core, and then you supplement it with the pieces that you need to get somewhere. I mean, look, the Yankees had Aaron Judge come up through their system, and then they go out and they add a Garrett Cole, or, they trade for a Juan Soto to pair with the young guys. And, not all the young guys are fantastic. I think Volpe's finding his way. Aaron Judge obviously is Aaron Judge. But what I'm trying to say is that's baseball. You build that young core and you supplement it with those strong pieces. I'm concerned that even though the Angels are at that stage, I'm not sure, and this is a lot to do with Arte Moreno, I'm not sure the incentive for those kinds of guys to come to the Angels right now, and perhaps this language from Arte Moreno is in service of incentivizing free agents to see, maybe things are changing out west.
Sure.
Because I sure as heck wouldn't have gone there last year.
Right.
But maybe things are changing out in Anaheim.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, you can enjoy Locked On MLB with our friend Sully. His show's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and he's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening to today's show, come on over to YouTube, find the episode, get in the comments section, and be sure you interact with us there. Hit that like button and subscribe button on your way down. We're almost to 8,000 subscribers. It'd be really awesome. I think we could hit that before the end of the year. Huh? What do you say?
Heck yeah.
Let's
go.
Mike, what do we have on deck for Tuesday's show?
We're going to talk about the job that Wash did as a manager this last season. What was good, what was not so good, and what needs to change for 2025. Let's talk about that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, Wash, you're on deck, my friend. All right, friends, we hope you'll come back and join us for that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, y'all. We hope you take care and join us again tomorrow, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday. Fire Wash, Fire Sosha, Fire Osmus, Fire Madden.
I'm ready for that segment.
Fire Nevin.